Hi. I wrote a paper called Why Rigor? Examining the uses of invented form, which looks at form as it's been utilized in the last, within the last 100 years, I would say, just to make it easier. So I look at two specific groups in particular. I look at a group of French writers from Normandy, France, called the AULA, and I look at poets of color who are writing poetry today in America. And I thought that this would be an interesting juxtaposition and would just create a more interesting topic for the essay. I initially approached it just wanting to write about Olympian writing technique and their inventions of form, since they had innovated like over 100 different types of form. But I found that that was not very interesting. At that time, I had used a lot of scholarly articles that were mostly critiques of their constraints that they were putting to use. The one namely was called Enough of This So-Called Minimalist Poetry. So a pretty harsh critique a lot of the time. And then I eventually broadened that to looking at different anthologies once I narrowed my research. This actually provided a little bit of difficulty for me as a researcher because new forms are being created at a very rapid rate by poets of color today. Since I wrote this paper last year, I've already found a new form that was invented by Denez Smith called the dozen, which is not included in this paper. So just for context, there are no scholarly articles being written currently about poets of color's poetics because it's still an ongoing process. So I had to draw a lot of inferences and do really close reads on collections and forwards to collections, forwards to anthologies. I used a lot of craft books so that I could reference back, understand more about the history of forms so that I could draw inferences from that as well. So a lot of it was inferring, a lot of it was just looking at the approach so that I could answer the question that the paper asked, which is, what's the point of form? And anyway, what's the point of writing in this rigorous way, especially when free verse remains the most popular written in form? So that's a little bit about my approach. Just to keep it short, I really hope that you enjoy the paper and that you find it interesting and that it encourages you to keep an eye out for new emerging forms by poets of colors especially, because they seem to be doing a lot of the innovating. So that's pretty much the gist of things. Thank you so much. I feel really excited to talk more about this topic, and it's something that I'm going to continue to work through, I do believe so. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
I want to thank Lisa Lepore, Asa Wilder, all the librarians and staff, not just for reading our papers and making research so user-friendly at Antioch, but also for honoring Lo and I with the 2020 Library Research Award. Thank you. I also want to thank my partner, Lo. Besides being a great friend at Antioch and partner on this project, Lo entered us in this contest, which I never would have done myself. I had undiagnosed learning disabilities. So when I read that we won the Library Research Award, I couldn't stop laughing. I kept imagining the stunned look on all my old teachers and librarians' faces when they heard the news. So, Lo, thank you for that treat. When I came to Antioch, one of my biggest fears was writing academically. Would my words seem smart enough? And what was APA? So I signed up for graduate writing and beyond with Rob Fox, and Rob taught me some very important lessons. Namely, academic writing can be creative, imaginative, and highly personal. But my favorite lesson was understanding the benefit of getting my words, thoughts, and feelings on the page with a shitty first draft. Rob taught that flow was just as important as structure, and that a writer's voice should always be heard. So thank you, Rob. And last but not least, I want to thank Theo, the Dr. Burns, for teaching me what I consider my most important lesson at Antioch. When we are looking at prevention and intervention for a community, we shouldn't limit our ideas to what we can realistically accomplish. We should dream big and push ourselves past what we believe we can accomplish to that which is ideal and right. So inspired by the use of my teacher's word shitty, I want to say crystal meth is a shitty drug. Addiction is a shitty problem. HIV and AIDS and the Reagan's response to it was shitty. Going through your entire life knowing that if you or your father or your grandfather or your uncle or your brother or your friend gets pulled over by a cop, they could get killed. That's shitty. Misused power, racism, and oppressing those who are marginalized are shitty behaviors. And shitty is way too kind of a word to describe our current executive branch. Lowe's and my idea for prevention and intervention for crystal meth addiction also applies to other addictions and other forms of shittiness in our world. Educating our kids when they're young. So in the words of Joffrey Nelson and Isaac Prelatinsky, the guiding vision is one of a society free of racism, sexism, heterosexism, poverty, violence, and environmental degradation. A society which celebrates diversity, shares the wealth, and practices equality, peace, sustainability, and preservation of our natural environment. It is possible. Thank you so much for our award.
I want to thank the library for this research award, which I share with my cohort mate Lane. Funnily enough, Lane and I were put together for this assignment in our community psychology class with Dr. Burns last summer, after we both had to miss the first week of class. So our classmates in the cohort were able to pick their partners for the final project, and we were placed together. And maybe wouldn't have worked together otherwise. Lane and I hadn't worked together before, but we're in the same cohort. But we share a position in the LGBT community and knew right away that we wanted to pick a topic at the heart of our community. The final assignment called for us to research a topic affecting the community at large, with assignments that built upon each other until the final paper was finished. We also created a slideshow and presented it the last week of class. Lane and I met several times in person, as well as worked independently, and we chose to do HIV status and meth use in the LGBT community, specifically in WeHo, a gay hub in Los Angeles. And this was an intimately personal topic for both Lane and I. I want to thank Lane for his vulnerability with this topic, as well as for his commitment to getting this paper right. He took on a lot of the research and writing, especially in the beginning, while I focused on editing and putting our PowerPoint together. Lane is such a charismatic and smart presenter and held that space so well for us in class as we were presenting, which meant a lot to me as I am pretty shy in class and often have trouble speaking in those spaces. I feel lucky to have worked with him and to have gotten the opportunity to research a subject that's so close to my heart. I really want to thank Dr. Burns, who's been an inspiration to me during my time at Antioch and whose classes and mentorship have helped guide me towards my ultimate goal of pursuing further scholarship in LGBT research and advocacy, especially for trans people of color. I really don't know where I'd be without him in this program. So thank you, Dr. Burns, and thanks to the library again. I really appreciate this.
Hi, my name is Maria, and I am the research detective. And the title of my paper is The Watts Towers. I had a homework assignment due, and the teacher asked if we can go in our communities and find a piece of art and write about it. So in my mind, I said, you know what? I can go to the Watts Towers. I wanted to find out more about the Black guy who created the Watts Towers. But as I got deeper into my research, I found out that he was a little short Italian guy and he created it all by himself. So once I went to the Watts Towers and I discovered this, I was able to also view a video of him and to see him actually on the towers, hard at work, finding the pieces. It touched my heart because he was out there all by himself, and it was the broken pieces of his life that he was putting back together when he was putting the Watts Towers together. So it was just amazing to see that. And by me going to the Watts Tower Center and meeting a gentleman by the name of Mike, you know, he gave me so much input about Mr. Simon Rodea and his life. And it just touched my heart. So as soon as I got home, you know, I just kissed my family really quick and told them, hey, I have work to do. So, you know, went straight to my room. I got all my paperwork together, my materials, and then I went straight to work. It was amazing to me. I didn't want to stop reading. I stuck my nose in the book and well, not in the book, but in the phone at that time. And I just dug deep into it. I didn't even want to come up, you know, for air. So, well, I would take my children to the Watts Towers. We would take walks. But the thing is, we never walked on the side of 107th Street going towards the gate. And that's where all the information was about him. But I always thought that it was this Black man who created the towers. And not only that, when the riots happened, all the people in the community, they gathered around the towers so that no one would touch it, no one would harm it. So I figured that it was a Black person who created it, so they were protecting it. So a lot of people in our community, they don't know who Simon Rodea really is because they never took the time out to do the research. So that's why I wanted to dig deeper into it, because I wanted to know, you know, who is this man that everyone in our community is protecting, you know, his work. Well, Simon also worked for a construction company, a tile company, and they had a lot of broken pieces of tile. So they would give it to him. But also the little children in our community would collect bottle tops, broken dishes, whatever it may be, and they used to bring it to him. But he couldn't pay anyone to help him because he said, I don't have no money to pay anyone. So, and he couldn't do it either because he had an ideal and he couldn't express to anyone what his ideal was to actually put it together. So because he had it in his head, he knew exactly how he was going to structure it out and put it together. But as a community, as a whole, everyone came together, all the neighbors, to bring him anything that they can find so he can use it. And it was just, that was beautiful to me, you know, the fact that community can stick together, you know. So I believe that's why a lot of the community now, even to this day, they treasure the Watchtowers, just like I do, because it was a community effort. You know, even though they didn't actually physically help him to build it, but they brought little pieces. So there's a little piece of the community inside of the Watchtowers. Honestly, I really believe that I will. The reason being is because as I was doing my research, I seen a lot of teenagers sitting on the bench or just talking. And I stopped and asked, you know, do you know who built the towers? And they tell me no. So me living here and finding out all the information that I found out, I would really like to let them know that statue that's out there, even though the statue is black, it is not a black man. He's Italian. And at the time he was building it, we had a diverse nationality in our community, you know, but everyone loved each other in our community. So I just want to be able to continue to show them that we as a whole, you know, in our community now, we can do that if we choose to. And, you know, I also love when different nationalities come down my street because it's Imperial and then 108. So those are the only streets that go all the way through. So when they're coming, you know, they get lost and they're like, hey, do you know how to get to the Watchtowers? And I'm like, yeah, I'll show you, you know, and just to be able to communicate with them, it's a blessing because when they come here, a lot of people don't know what to expect because Watts, you know, it gets a bad rep, you know. But to have someone be able to stop and help them and show them an act of unconditional kindness, we all need that. I heard about the Library Research Award through my teacher, Mr. Fabian. And on my paper, he wrote that this may be one of the best papers he's ever read. And he had me crying literally for 30 minutes straight. I couldn't stop because me being a part of the bridge program was the first time I've ever been to college. So this was a wonderful experience for me, but I never knew that I had that ability to become the research detective. And it actually changed my life. It really did because now I can't wait to discover what I'll learn next, you know, and that's with anything that I do.